Imagine a vast landscape, once teeming with life, now transformed into a desolate wasteland where dust storms rage like wildfires, suffocating dreams of prosperity. The 1930s Midwest, particularly the Great Plains, witnessed one of the most devastating environmental disasters in American history, the Dust Bowl. Here, expanse after expanse of farmland turned to dust under relentless winds, forcing a reckoning for those who tilled the soil. In the 1920s, the Great Plains thrived with agriculture. Farmers, lured by the promise of rich soil and fertile fields, cultivated vast stretches of wheat, corn, and other crops. The climate seemed forgiving, but beneath the surface, systemic flaws were taking root. The introduction of mechanized farming techniques allowed for massive plowing, leading to widespread monoculture. In this race for productivity, farmers neglected sustainable practices. Instead of planting cover crops to protect the soil, they stripped the land bare. Then came the drought. Beginning in 1930, the Great Plains fell victim to a series of dry years. Rainfall evaporated, leaving hardened ground exposed to the harsh winds of the Midwest. Combined with poor agricultural practices, this created a perfect storm. A staggering 100 million acres of farmland became uninhabitable, often referred to as the Dirty 30s. As the soil eroded, so did the farmers' ability to survive. By 1932, wheat yields in key areas plummeted by more than 60%. The economic impacts were just as severe. The region exported 54 million bushels of wheat in 1929. By 1933, that number had dropped dramatically. Only 6 million bushels made it out of the Dust Bowl region. The dust storms that rolled through the area were unlike anything recorded until then. On the worst days, called Black Sundays, people reported visibility dropping to near zero. Schools closed and families barricaded themselves indoors, covering their mouths and noses with damp cloths. Children had to be shielded from dirt flying at high speeds, and livestock suffered too, choking on the swirling clouds of dust. A 1935 report described these storms with troubling precision. The wind carried topsoil into 27 states and even as far as New York City. Urbanites, previously unaffected, felt the dust's reach and began to grasp the magnitude of the catastrophe. The federal government, caught off guard by the intensity of this natural disaster, struggled to find solutions. Many families faced ruin. They lost their homes, their crops, and their future. Reports from the time indicated that in the year 1935 alone, there were over 55 dust storms recorded. By 1936, desperation grew. Once proud farmers sought refuge elsewhere, searching for a new start, a chance to reclaim the American dream. But where would they go? The Great Plains had become a graveyard for dreams, and the rest of the nation was not prepared for the influx of displaced souls. This crisis forced the federal government to consider interventions previously deemed unnecessary. The Dust Bowl not only altered landscapes and livelihoods, it shaped policies related to immigration. What were those changes? How did the plight of desperate Midwesterners inspire a shift in attitudes towards immigrants seeking refuge? The questions lingered as dust settled. Would America's borders open wider in response to calamity, or would fear and resentment prevail? As the Dust Bowl's winds howled, the answers remained buried within the swirling clouds of uncertainty. Imagine families standing in front of their weather-beaten homes, faces etched with desperation. Between 1930 and 1936, nearly 2.5 million people fled the parched plains. This was not just migration, it was an exodus. They became known as Dust Bowl refugees, or colloquially, Okies. Desperate for work, they packed their belongings into beat-up cars and trucks, heading toward a promised land that often turned out to be a mirage. In California, once a symbol of prosperity, these migrants were met with mixed reactions. The agricultural industry was booming and fields needed laborers, yet local residents viewed the influx with suspicion. By 1940, for every 5 people in California, one was an Okie. They brought traditions, resilience, and an indomitable spirit, but also spawned tension. Communities changed overnight. The arrival of thousands of newcomers strained resources, igniting cultural clashes and economic unease. Okies transformed the landscape of California, leaving their mark. They settled in camps, forming tight-knit communities. Stories emerged of shared struggles, hope, and hard work. Children played amid the dust, while adults worked fields from sunrise to sunset. Yet they often faced discrimination. They were seen as intruders, a drain on local economies, assuming they'd take jobs away from the locals. A paradox ensued. California needed workers, but its citizens felt threatened. The dusty migration was anything but smooth. Reports piled up of families enduring unimaginable hardships. In 1935, the California Department of Employment estimated that 300,000 migrants arrived from the Dust Bowl states, overwhelming local job markets. Jobs were scarce, and competition was fierce. Many found themselves in squalid conditions and faced hunger. In reality, tension boiled over, leading to riots and confrontations in places like the San Joaquin Valley. Nationwide, the narrative shifted. The plight of Okies became a matter of national concern. With radio broadcasts and newspaper articles depicting their struggles, public sentiment began to sway. The human impact of the Dust Bowl reached beyond just displaced farmers. It challenged the very fabric of American identity. The American dream began to feel like a distant memory for these families who thought they could claim their stake in the land of opportunity, only to discover despair in the face of change. As the Dust Bowl raged on, the federal government could no longer ignore the cries for help. The Farm Security Administration, FSA, was born, aiming to assist displaced farmers with loans and resources. But the question loomed large. How would the country handle the growing need for laborers while balancing the fears of local populations? The Okie migration not only created a new cultural identity, but also set the stage for a significant evolution in federal immigration policy. New programs emerged, but they aimed to address the immediate crisis of displacement and unemployment, rather than reassess America's open-door policy toward immigrants. So what happens when desperate people collide with systemic barriers? Will they find new opportunities or face further marginalization? As the Dust Bowl left an indelible mark on the landscape, the implications for immigration policy would echo for decades to come, leading to a profound question. How would the government respond to those seeking a home when the earth itself seemed to turn against them? The Dust Bowl didn't just devastate farms, it exposed deep fissures in the American fabric. Initially, the federal response was tepid. President Herbert Hoover believed in limited government intervention, leaving families to navigate the storm on their own. As crops withered and dust clouds choked the horizon, millions grew desperate. By 1935, things began to change. The Soil Conservation Service was established, aiming to restore the land and prevent further erosion. This initiative sought to teach farmers sustainable practices, but it was too little, too late for many. By then, the crisis had peaked. The U.S. was in the grips of a national catastrophe, embedded in economic despair. The New Deal emerged as a lifeline. Franklin D. Roosevelt's ambitious programs aimed to revitalize the economy. Farmers received much-needed relief through these initiatives, but not all were welcomed with open arms. The government offered financial aid and loans, yet many Okies faced salary caps and quotas. The system seemed designed to support those who had merely been affected, while the refugees trudged on, often denied the assistance needed to help them start anew. As these Dust Bowl refugees, now known colloquially as Okies, poured into California, their presence necessitated a robust discussion on immigration policy. Could the states absorb such an influx? The answer was murky, fraught with tension. In the face of economic turmoil, established residents resented what they viewed as an invasion, their jobs and homes threatened. California needed workers, but the population surge from Oklahoma and Texas unsettled local communities. Discontent brewed in the fields and towns. Struggling through prejudices, Okies were treated as intruders in their pursuit of the American dream. Yet California's booming agricultural economy craved labor, creating a paradox that would tug at the nation's conscience. In response, the federal government tightened immigration policies, a sweeping shift in approach toward those seeking refuge. By 1942, as World War II loomed, the Bracero program was initiated. It opened borders to Mexican laborers seeking to fill the labor gaps in American agriculture. This program, however, was a double-edged sword. It underscored the economic necessity while reflecting the contradictions in how America treated its newly impoverished. The struggles of the Dust Bowl refugees both highlighted and challenged the foundations of American identity. How could a nation that prided itself on liberty and opportunity turn its back when the soil turned to dust? New immigrant policies sparked debate. Were they designed to support the country's agricultural needs, or were they a means to shut the door on those desperately seeking help? As the government navigated these turbulent waters, one thing became clear. The 1930s were a tipping point, reshaping not just immigration policy, but the very notion of the American dream. What would these changes mean for future generations of immigrants and farmers? Would America welcome them or push them away? The fallout from the Dust Bowl was just beginning, setting the stage for a new conflict altogether. As the Dust Bowl ravaged the Midwest, it didn't just change landscapes, it reshaped the very fabric of American society. By the late 1930s, the migrations of Dust Bowl refugees, often referred to as Okies, dramatically altered the demographics of the United States. Families who once thrived on their land now found themselves in unfamiliar territories, scouring for work and a new beginning. The heart of America beat in the fields, but now the thud of despair rang through migrant camps and makeshift shelters. Cities like Los Angeles teemed with newcomers, but their arrival sparked a backlash. Long-standing residents viewed the Dust Bowl migrants with suspicion, fearing job losses and competition for resources. The air was thick with tension. Local authorities often pushed back against the influx. High unemployment rates compounded fears, leading to hostility against these desperate families seeking a fresh start. In response, federal immigration policy began to evolve, influenced by the economic realities of the times. The traditional view of immigrants as a source of labor shifted. The U.S. government now faced pressure to balance the needs of its own citizens with those of incoming migrants. In 1942, the Bracero program was born, an initiative designed to bring in temporary laborers from Mexico to bolster the agricultural workforce. But this arrangement was a double-edged sword, presenting opportunities while complicating notions of national identity. Underpinning this policy shift was a critical realization. The American dream was no longer just about land ownership and self-sufficiency. It was about survival in the face of adversity. The plight of the Dust Bowl migrants highlighted the fragility of that dream. Many who relocated sought not riches, but simple dignity and the chance to provide for their families. Yet their struggle raised questions that echoed throughout the nation. Was the American dream still attainable? Who truly belonged in this land of opportunity? As the country emerged from the depths of the Dust Bowl, the legacy of the crisis lingered. New Deal programs laid the foundation for future governmental involvement in agriculture and labor issues. But the Dust Bowl's impact extended beyond policy. It forced Americans to confront their perceptions of hard work, community, and entitlement. For many, the era underscored a stark truth. The American landscape was irrevocably changing, bending under the weight of human ambition and nature's fury. The evolution of immigration policy was just beginning. Year by year, the repercussions of the Dust Bowl shaped national discourse, spawning not only new laws but also new ideologies regarding who could claim a share of the American dream. Moving into the 1940s and beyond, the remnants of this disaster would continue to influence societal attitudes as each new wave of immigrants faced their own trials. Could the policies that emerged from the Dust Bowl's devastation pave the way for a more inclusive definition of what it means to be American? Or would they merely reinforce divisions and deepen resentments that had begun in the heart of the Great Plains? As the echoes of the past resonate with today's challenges, the true test of the American spirit lies ahead. The Dust Bowl wasn't just an environmental disaster, it was a turning point. What consequences will this pivotal moment unleash in the years to come?